Later this morning, autonomous truck technology company Kodiak is going to begin trading on the NASDAQ after completing a SPAC transaction. And joining us right now on the potential benefits of AI-powered trucking, that means trucks that are driving themselves, is Kodiak's founder and CEO, Don Burnett. I did not realize how these things are already on the roads, at least down in Texas at this point. Why don't you describe what the trucks are, how they run, and what the AI component is?
Sure. So trucking is obviously a huge part of the American economy. And one of the big challenges over the last several decades has been driver shortage and challenges that drivers face on the road. And so we've been working to automate the trucks with AI technology that allows them to effectively drive on their own. And our first commercial deployment is out in West Texas with a company called Atlas Energy Solutions. And we have now 8 trucks that are fully driverless, meaning there's nobody in the cab out operating on a daily basis. So there's actually quite a bit of traffic, and in particular, there's a lot of close quarter traffic. So we have a lot of oncoming vehicles, heavy trucks, big vehicles, pedestrians, pretty much everything you would find on any road network. But it is fairly remote, and it's a great place to first deploy the technology. So safety is always our first priority. And as you said, our trucks are programmed to be conservative. They're going to sit in the right-hand lane, minding their own business. They're not going to cut you off. Yeah. If they're going to pass, they're going to pass cautiously. They're going to pass when there's an opening. And so they're going to abide by the speed limit. They never get drowsy. They never drive drunk. Right. They're always paying attention 360 degrees around the vehicle.
You have 3,000 paid hours of these driverless trucks to this point. Have you had any accidents, had any issues?
We have not had any at-fault accidents with our system. We take
you
safety.
At fault? Was there somebody else?
We've had situations where we've been hit, primarily in the trailer, by other vehicles. Absolutely, it's happened a handful of times. Yeah, the trucks are actually detecting whether they've been hit, so we're monitoring all around the truck. So we see when there's been a collision. The truck safely pulls over to the side of the road, and we have a 24-hour monitoring system, which allows a human to then go in and review the material, communicate with law enforcement, and handle the situation on the ground. Well, the great thing about our trucks, in addition to real-time monitoring of the scenario, is that we're logging all of that data. We have cameras, we have LiDAR, we have radar, so we know the speeds of all the vehicles, we know where they are on the road, and we're logging all of it. And so we can effectively replay the entire situation in a lot of detail.
Did anybody get how long before we see the trucks in urban areas, in metro areas, in suburban areas?
Gradually over the next coming years, you're going to see an expansion of the rollout. You're going to see more trucks on the road. You're going to see more efficiency from these vehicles, and eventually they will be ubiquitous across all roadways.
How expensive is it for you to get the startup on this? How much capital do you have to pour into this? And then how do you make your money? You charge a service fee, basically, per hour or per mile?
Yeah, so this is a driver as a service, as we call it. So we effectively provide the service that a driver would typically bring to these companies, and they would pay us on kind of a fixed rate. So we provide the technology, the hardware, the sensors, the computers, and then they pay us as a service fee on a regular basis to operate and drive the truck.
Kodiak received a $30 million Army contract to adapt its technology for military trucks. There was also a $50 million contract that they signed with the U.S. Air Force in 2022. In these cases, they're looking to basically make vehicles able to go into very high-risk, dangerous missions without people on board.
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca, with co-hosts featuring socialist Andy Lipson, socialist and community college math professor Michael Hoffman, and socialist Kenny Cepeda. We're online at whatslftpodcast.com. You can find that link to our site in the episode notes. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode where you found this episode. We have merch as well. If you fancy a shirt, contact us to our site at whatslftpodcast.com. Thank you. All right. So today we're joined with Steve Zeltzer, founder of LaborFest.net and producer of Workweek and Capitalism, Race, and Democracy on Pacifica and Labor Video Project, and member of the Pacifica Media Workers Guild, and also a supporter of the United Front Committee for a Labor Party. Also helped build Labor Tech, which focuses on the role of AI, robotics, and tech in the workplace, and is organizing a conference on AI and future of labor on the 13th of December. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I will hand it over to Andy because this is the connection that we've made through Andy.
Yeah. Well, first off, welcome again, Steve, and thanks for being part of this. The big reason I wanted to do this episode is that Steve, is this conference being put on by LaborFest, or is it really, as far as I know, this is something you're doing?
Well, LaborFest is endorsing it, and also Work Week, and also probably the DSA. They're
Okay.
endorsing.
Oh, great.
It's a
Okay.
broad coalition of groups that are interested in the subject.
Right. Well, so this conference that's happening, it's going to be at the San Francisco Public Library event. It's called AI, Labor, and the Future of San Francisco and the World. And it says here a panel discussing the impact of AI on the working class. And it's going to be Saturday, December 13th, from 2 to 6 p.m. I believe that this event is it's an in-person event, but is it true that people can register and Zoom in? Is that
It'll be streamed by the library.
Okay.
They're part of the partners to make this happen.
Okay. And my connection to it is I'll be one of the people speaking there'll be a panel on AI and education where I'll be speaking, and Michael, but I'm really excited about the fact that Steve has invited John Kleisik to come and speak at it for that part. But I believe that there'll be an opening panel, a series of kind of panels on AI and education, AI and healthcare, AI and transportation, maybe, or something like that.
Logistics, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe even AI and tech. I'm not sure, but then it'll have a culminating panel of kind of like talking about what are we going to do about this, because it's educational, but it's also trying to connect people in different sectors to get them to start maybe linking up and talk about how we're going to address this giant behemoth coming at us. I've known Steve for a while, but not really. No, I don't know much about you in terms of your background and past. Is okay, how did you get from where you were to here? And one of the things I was telling Jake when I was asking him if he'd be interested in doing this before I reached out to you, Steve, about hey, maybe you should contact Jake, was the fact that from my vantage point and from the vantage point of some of the criticisms we've had of the left here on what's left, it has often avoided this area of AI, digital data collection, not so much surveillance. I think they do kind of talk about that, but seeing the real dangers of technology rather than talking about technology as this thing that's liberatory, which I think tends to be the emphasis, is if we could just as workers, get a control of it. And I feel like it's significant to me that a person like yourself has really latched on to the issue of AI and has decided that I feel like you're making it a big issue, like trying to promote the idea that we need to be talking about this. In the past, I've seen you be very aggressive on all these host of issues, of healthcare issues, teachers, labor issues, but to have you also now really feature AI as connected to a deep labor issue, to me is very significant. Because when I can't remember who I was talking to, but I said when Steve Zeltzer locks onto something, you're like a pit bull on a rope. And I think we need people like you kind of making this highlighting this as an issue that everyone needs to be paying attention to. So I'm very excited about the conference, but I'm also very excited to have you kind of on the job here. So part of me just maybe wants to ask you about your more recent history with deciding to do something like this.
Well, I was born in San Francisco. I'm native of San Francisco, and my family moved to San Jose after my father graduated law school here. So growing up in San Jose, when it had 200,000 people, orchards, and the transformation of the South Bay to Silicon Valley is very important, because the introduction of computer industry, IBM, was taking place in the South Bay, Silicon Valley. And the way it was advertised, computers, when they were pushing it, is the introduction of the computer industry, and computers would free human beings. You wouldn't have to do menial work. it's the future where people could be creative and they would have freedom. That's how it was propagandized. And of course, I was skeptical about that because the people that were doing, the owners, the capitalists, had their own agenda. I mean, they were pushing it because it would make money. Now, at that time, capitalism was growing, 60s and 70s, and this boom in Silicon Valley and the development of internet was a very big thing, not just for Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, but the world. And of course, as we all know, the internet was developed by the defense industry and the web for the purpose of living after a nuclear war. And that was one of the reasons it was developed. So it came from the military, this development. But, a lot of technology has come from the military. That's where the investment has gone in by capitalists into the military to develop tools of war. And I had been active since I went to school, San Francisco State. I was in the strike. I was a activist in the union there, in the library union, and I worked as a longshoreman during the strike. And I was interested in technology, the effect of technology, because we are affected by technology. We affect technology, and technology is used by the capitalists to make more profit. And as everyone knows, the Industrial Revolution, most people know, was a major development of technology, the loom, power, steam power, and displacement of a large number of workers as a result of that revolutionary development of technology. So I was active and been active in the labor movement and trade union organizing and working for a labor party, a mass workers party against the Democrats and Republicans. And also I was interested in international solidarity, educating myself and other working people about workers around the world, because obviously we're in a global economy and workers are facing the same issues around the world as we face here. So in 1989, I discovered email. It was before the web, and there was a group, Institute for Global Communication, IGC, which was based in San Francisco, which I found out about and discovered email, and felt that this technology, I thought, this is tremendous. Email, no borders, direct communication without cost for people all over the world. So I really felt this was historic for the working class, to be able to have freedom of communication globally without having to send letters or something like that. You can communicate. So I began to organize with other people to set up a thing called LaborNet, which was at that point, email-based, group, like industry conferences of workers around the world on communication. And I found out, there were struggles going on through email that I discovered about, like in Sri Lanka, a struggle of workers in the free trade zone, women workers who were organizing. How would you know about that with the information blockade that we have, that the capitalists have? Through email, I was able to get that information. So when I discovered Institute for Global Communication, we set up a group called LaborNet, which still exists. We're part of LaborNet, which is part of the Association of Progressive Communication. So we had our first conference, actually, a labor tech conference. What I felt is that it was critical to educate ourselves about technology, how technology is being used in the workplace, how workers can use it, and how it's being used against workers. So in order to do that, we had educational conferences and set it up a conference in 1989. It was the first conference. And at that time, it was fax machines. You didn't have the web, but, fax machines were an important part of technology. I mean, a lot of people use fax machines. Some unions used it. So we began these conferences in '89, and we brought people from around the world to these conferences. We got support. Unions supported us and others, and we had an annual labor tech conference. We had workers from Japan, from Turkey, from Russia or Soviet Union at that time, and we began an international labor media movement, Korea. And these labor tech conferences were quite useful because it was a way of developing an understanding of technology, but also using video as well. And I began getting involved in 1984, actually, with media and community access, because community access, when it first started, cable, when it first started, was sold to the people freedom of expression. Everybody will be able to broadcast and have their own shows. So I started Labor on the Job, 1984, which was the first labor TV show in San Francisco, and it went on for like 10 years. Weekly labor TV show where I interviewed workers, trade unionists, and had video footage. Went out, videotaped, and put that footage on the channel. So it was a labor TV show in San Francisco. And I've always believed that we need an international labor channel that shows the struggles of working people globally in every country of the world, every language, that history. And so communication tools have developed. So the idea of doing that has been in the past very difficult. Now it's a lot easier with social media and with the development of technology, communication technology. So the web obviously offered an opportunity to put up video and reach even more people. And of course, the development of the web also increased the ability to exploit workers globally. And the internet has been a major tool in the development of the world economy, and the ability of capitalists to exploit workers globally, pit worker against worker globally, and to exploit people who are in very difficult economic circumstances, but they have access to a cell phone and the internet. And in China, they call the cell phone the machine, because it is a machine. It's a computer. And capitalists use this machine to exploit workers. In fact, they do now today in like this technology, autonomous vehicles, the people behind it in the background are workers around the world. So you have a global exploitation of workers using this technology, and workers are now tethered to the cell phone. The cell phone was supposed to free people. In reality, what's happened now is people are tethered to it 24 hours a day, and they're working all these different jobs. And it's, the cell phone is a vehicle for exploitation of the working class. That's what's going on with the cell phone. And of course, the development of AI, artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, has been another vehicle to exploit the working class, to commodify education, commodify healthcare, to make more profit from it, which is the nature of capitalism, is to make more profit. And so we can see that this historical development of the drive for profit is linked to the development of technology for the capitalists to make more profit. And development of general AI and artificial intelligence has been seen as a way of basically getting rid of labor, human labor, to increase profit. And that's what's happening on a massive level, on a global level. And that's why today, the massive speculative bubble in San Francisco of billions and billions of dollars being invested in San Francisco and data plants around the country, around the world, is for the increase of exploitation of working people. That's really what's behind it. And it's a contradictory thing because in capitalism, the capitalism works by production of commodities and surplus value by the exchange of those commodities. That's how the capitalists make profit. If you get rid of workers, who's going to buy the commodities? So it's undermining really a fundamental aspect of capitalism and is going to create an even deeper crisis. Now, along the lines of that is, of course, the world war situation, the tariffs, the trade war that we're going in, which is threatening the world working class here with the trade war and globally. We're going likely into a depression and world war. That's what capitalists are aiming towards. I mean, the invasion attack on Venezuela, the attack on other countries, Canada, we're going to war with other capitalist countries. And this is a natural development. It's not new. It happened in the 20s and 30s. So in any event, this issue of technology and I don't see it as a just negative because workers can use technology. In fact, as a global economy, workers can seize the world, can seize using this technology. They can organize internationally because they are international. Global companies are workers around the world. I gave a presentation a few years ago in Ankara to the Chamber of Electrical Workers, electrical engineers. It was electrical engineering. And it was interesting because I talked about this idea of how the cell phone and technology was being used to exploit workers. And after I gave my presentation, a guy came up to me and said, have you given this presentation in China? I said, why do you ask? I work for a Chinese company. They have to hear that in China.
Yeah.
So the level of exploitation is a global level. And that's what he was saying. The Chinese workers need to hear this story about this technology and what this is doing. And of course, in China as well, the introduction of AI technology is massive. Autonomous vehicles, factories, the docks in China are automated. They've gotten rid of a large number of longshoremen. And there's a crisis in China of unemployment of young people. It's a very explosive situation because this technology allows for the displacement of large numbers of workers. And Goldman Sachs did a study which said that 350 million workers are going to lose their jobs globally. So, and studying this and looking at it, particularly with education and healthcare, there was just a strike of of Kaiser nurses in San Rafael. They were getting rid of 42 nurses and replacing them with AI. So you talk to an AI robot for your what's wrong with you instead of going to a nurse. The same in education. And I've always felt that education was under attack, especially with charters, where computers and software are brought in to get rid of teachers. I mean, the whole idea of testing, instead of doing your own test, you have Pearson and Company doing the testing for profit. The whole drive for commodification of education is part of capitalism and part of AI. How can we use software and technology? Google, everything is on a Google sheet, Google document for teachers. All that information is being grabbed from students and from teachers. Excuse me. So this is an important part of our lives, and I think it's become more and more high profile, not only because capitalism is in a speculative binge around AI, but also workers are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. In California, as everyone knows, most know, Gavin Newsom has got $10 million from Google, and there was a bill in the state legislature twice to require a truck driver if you have a truck over 10,000 pounds. He vetoed it twice. One of the things about capitalism and the Democrats and Republicans is they're controlled by the billionaires and they do the bidding of them. So there's no regulation. And the ideology of the fascist, and this is another aspect of AI, is that you have a group of what I would call techno-fascist, who Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, who believe that we should have this AI and technology and they should be in charge of it. And they should go to Mars, and that's the priority, but they're control of the technology to get rid of workers, large numbers of workers. Twitter, they would like completely automated factories. And that's what they're driving towards. And also within US capitalism, you have a situation where the crisis of capitalism has led to a situation where these techno-fascists basically are in charge of the state now. I believe Trump is a fascist. The people around him are fascists, Steve Miller and others, and they believe you need fascism in order to do what they want to do, increase their profits and get rid of workers, get rid of unions. And they're in charge of the government now. And David Sachs is in charge of digital development, cryptocurrency, which is another expression of these capitalists and technology, and that is we're going to we're going to understand what the value of currency by creating it artificially or with computers. And we're going to, that's a firm way of understanding the value of something, but actually it's speculation. The cryptocurrency binge that's going on now using technology is going to lead to a bust and probably a collapse bigger than 2008. So these are all issues, technology for the working class. They're life and death issues. And workers in the United States are angry. The class hatred is growing. And you have a fascist government that is using the militarization of the cities. It's using union busting of federal workers. They want to completely take away any kind of democratic rights, dispense with the Constitution, dispense with our democracy. And we have to be aware of why that's happening, how it's happening, and also the use of technology in regard to what we are facing in the workplace, in our communities, and society.
So what I heard, and part of what you were saying was that at an earlier time in the 80s, maybe even the 70s and the 80s, as tech was being promoted as this liberatory thing, as this place that would allow workers to connect, there then became a point where you started to see it. It seemed like there was a transition point that happened for you, for when you said, okay, yeah, there's that possibility, but now I see more the threat. Can you describe more about maybe that? At least that's the way I heard it from you. Was there a kind of an awakening point where you started to say, oh my gosh, this isn't just all peaches and cream here with the possibility of connecting workers internationally across borders and a no borders kind of world? Now maybe I now see more menace here. Can you describe that transition?
Well, I mean, working on the docks. See, I actually worked on the docks before containers.
Yeah.
Where you break bulk, you take things off separately. It required a lot more workers right there. With containerization, which started in the Bay Area, actually, it was the elimination of a large number of workers. In fact, there was a fight in the ILWU, the Longshore Union, about containerization and how it would affect it. That was technology. So the issue of technology is not just in AI or not just electronics. It's also our work environment and working on the docks. I can see that. And the workers, I believe technology should benefit workers. So there was a fight in the docks for a guaranteed work week, but I believe if you don't require as many workers, reduce the work week to 20 hours a week. So people can have time. But since our society is controlled by capitalists, they're not interested in reducing the work week. They're interested in increasing their profit by more exploitation. Now, unions are a vehicle to defend workers. Workers can use unions to defend themselves, and that's why unions were organized to defend workers. But the unions in the United States particularly are business unions. The whole structure of unions is business with individual contracts. And unions are incapable in the United States of confronting AI. That's why this conference we're having is important, because the union bureaucracy do not want to fight the system. They want to negotiate. They want to be in partnership with the capitalists, and they want to make deals. And the problem that the union bureaucracy has now is that it's very difficult making deals when you have fascist government and when the capitalists say, we want to get rid of you. We don't want you to have any control or any power. And this is what we're facing today. It's an existential crisis. And that's why, for example, the strike of the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Union were so fundamental, because those workers are intelligentsia, are artists, and their intellectual work that they do in producing their work is threatened by this technology. So this when I went down there to interview them, they workers were telling me this is an existential crisis for us. If we can't stop this AI, we will be destroyed. Our craft, our ability to defend ourselves will be destroyed. Well, this is a very radical thing. When somebody says this struggle is existential for me, for my survival, that's a radical thing. when you think about it. And it's not just actors and actresses and writers, it's millions of workers, the majority of workers. And so this is a very radical threat that the working class in the United States and workers around the world face. How are we going to confront this? So it's a broader issue affecting the entire working class, the entire planet. In fact, if you look at the craziness of these data plants and how they're unregulated, they're building them all over the country. I was at my CWA convention. I'm a member of the News Guild, which is part of the CWA. I went to the CWA convention, and I interviewed this sister from Tucson, Arizona, who's a public worker, works for the city of Tucson, fighting the Democratic Party, which runs the city. And they discovered that there was a project, Blue Project, that was going to be building a data plant in Tucson, using the water in Tucson. It's in a desert. So they're going to grab the water in a desert to run this data plant. So she began a struggle against it with other people. There was a struggle going on. They even got the Republicans to support this struggle to stop it because they were keeping it secret. Well, this is like the madness of a system in which you would build a data plant in a desert and try to take water from a city where water is, limited. So I think it shows really the craziness of capitalism and this drive now for AI and data centers. And that's what's going on globally.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying, Steve, about I'm thinking about labor in the during the time that Obama, when I was working for the school district, and I just remember there was a charter school expansion, and there was also teacher evaluation based on standardized tests that were promoted by the Obama policies. Do you have anything to say around maybe under a Democrat? Because I know you're making criticisms on the Republican side, which I get. I'm just wondering, what about
the Democrats have gone along. In fact, the Democrats, are pushing privatization in charters. Tony Thurmond wanted to do, because of the danger of charter schools, they set up a commission to investigate charter schools in California. Who does he put on the commission? Charter school operators. So they're going to investigate themselves. I was involved in a struggle in Richmond against a millionaire who had a charter school who wanted to grab property. His charter school was using software on students, his own software on students. I mean, in other words, you're using the students as guinea pigs for your software. Privatization of education is part of the problem that we face, and the unions and the Democratic Party have been pushing it. In fact, we'll be discussing at this conference, the unions, bureaucracy, AFT, NEA, have taken money from Microsoft. They took money from Bill Gates. Bill Gates was invited to the convention of the AFT in Seattle, where he was booed, to talk about the wonderful things that he's doing with technology. So we have a pro-capitalist trading bureaucracy. We have a pro-imperialist trading bureaucracy, which supports a capitalist party, an imperialist party, the Democratic Party, which is, that's why workers are angry. Democrats and Republicans are the same. They both take money. Insurance companies give money to both. We can't even get single payer as they have in Canada. So we are caught in a bind in California. Yeah. And that's, it's not the Republicans. It's not Trump that's running California. It's the Democrats that run California, and they have a supermajority in the legislature. They're cutting education. They're cutting healthcare. They could have a special session of the legislature in California and say, we're going to put an oil depletion tax. We're going to go after the billionaires. They won't do it. They won't do it.
Yeah.
They're saying we have to have austerity. They're raising the fees at UC. They're raising the fees. I mean, it used to be, when I was growing up, $72 a semester at San Francisco State. Now young kids have to go into debt the rest of their lives for education. In Europe, it's free. You're even paid to go to school. But, with a capitalist controlled system with two capitalist parties, no choice, we're in a bind. And the wealth, there's so much wealth, and that's one of the nature of capitalism. There's so much wealth in this country, and yet there's deprivation, poverty, homelessness, people going hungry. Why? With all the wealth and the resources, it's the nature of our system.
And offshoring of manufacturing jobs,
all over the
trade
world.
agreements. Mm-hmm.
I mean, technology has been used to exploit workers around the world and to pit U.S. workers against workers in India and China and other worlds. In other words, capitalism, the development of the technology has been used as a vehicle to pit U.S. workers against all the other workers of the world, to fight each other. And this whole trade war, blaming workers in China, as if the Chinese were the ones responsible for their industrial development. It was American capitalists who closed down factories and deindustrialized the United States. The Rust Bowl is the direct result of drive for profits, going to the South, non-union, going to Mexico, and then going to Asia and investing massive amounts of capital in China for profits, where you had slave labor conditions at these factories, where workers were committing suicide because of their conditions. What's that about? It's about capitalism, drive for profits, and using technology to allow that drive for profits. So workers are competing against each other internationally. But actually, this brings workers together internationally. We face the same attacks. We face the same conditions, privatization, deregulation. All these issues are international issues. And the ability to link up workers globally is growing, actually.
I myself am affected, by the way. I'm in both industries that are going to be completely disappearing people in my sector. Anyone who interprets or translates or teaching or anything in the education field, these are threatened.
Well, COVID,
jobs.
I have a friend who's going to be at this conference speaking as an interpreter as well at University of California. But the COVID pandemic was used as another vehicle to get rid of workers and bring in technology, bring in video interpreting, to get rid of interpreters. So there's so many areas that are threatened, jobs that are threatened. And it's a social crisis, it's a political crisis. And the ideology of capitalism, deregulation, let it rip, is way embedded in the two capitalist parties. They accept the right of the capitalists to control things. If you accept capitalism, the framework of capitalism, you're done. If you accept the framework of capitalism, you're done. You can't compete because you end up, in a system in which you're negotiating against yourself, really. And that's the situation we're in today. And that's why there's a growth of socialism. The majority of young people look at socialism as a future. They don't see a future in this country. I mean, when kids have to stay in their family homes because they can't start a life, when teachers have to have 3 or 4 teachers living together because they can't afford housing, that is a social crisis. I know in Vienna, Austria, I was there. In 1919, there was a united front of the coalition, Socialist Party, Communist Party. They had a housing crisis. They said, look, we're going to make the wealthy pay. They charged the wealthy in Vienna. They built 200,000 housing units. Working class housing units still exist. They solved their housing crisis. In San Francisco, you have 60,000 empty flats. People are sleeping in the street, and capitalists are investing, hedge funds are investing in housing, not for housing, but for speculation. It's the nature of this capitalist system.
I actually have a question. So I think that by and large, like we agree on your analysis, in terms of technology, the drive of capitalism for profit, right? Like that's in the consequences of that. My question is about like regulation. You talk about deregulation, and so where do we put our energies, right? In a system that has institutions that do its bidding, right? Where do we put our energies when unions work to, plot against workers, basically? How do we, go about effecting change, right? Like having power and, without these institutions that are obviously part of the system, they're not reformable. They're not, because that's what, we get people like Bernie Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez, that what they do in effect is drive people back into a system that leads you to a dead end. So
Well, okay, I don't believe in the Democratic Republican Party. I don't believe a capitalist party can solve our problems. I believe we need a mass Democratic working class party, Labor Party, and our union should break from the Democrats and Republicans. I believe, though, that we have to be educated about what we're facing. It's not this individual capitalist. It's not just this party. It's not just Trump. It's a system. It's like no King's Day. It's not just Trump. It's a system that we are facing. So we have to fight in our unions and in the working class uh, against this system. And how do you do that? By concrete issues, uh, against data centers, against the introduction of AI, and against the parties that allow the introduction of AI. I don't believe that the capital should be in charge of AI. I mean, there's a debate about will destroy everything and take over. That is an issue, the development of AI. But I don't believe the capital should be in charge of anything, because the purpose of their being in charge of it is to make profit. It's not to better my life or your life or anybody's life. So I'm for a different system, a system of socialism, of working people being in control of things. And that is a process that has to take place. But actually, people are thinking about that. When workers go on strike and they say their struggle is existential, that's a fundamental question. You're not going to be able to exist as an artist, as a photographer, as a graphic artist, as all kinds of jobs, because the system is not allowing you to live. And that's a fundamental question. If the system is not allowing you to live, then you have to change the system. And actually, revolution, social revolution, doesn't take place because of rhetoric or propaganda. It takes place because people can't survive. And that's the period that we're going into now. You can't survive. It's not an intellectual issue, it's a survival issue. And millions of people cannot survive. I mean, how do you survive with the inflation, with the fact you can't afford housing? You can't survive. So that's a radical situation. Mondani, his victory was an expression of that. People are just fed up. And he wants to reform it. He believes in electoral road to socialism. He believes that. I don't believe that. I don't believe the people that have the power in this country are going to give it up. And what they're saying now, these techno-fascists, is we're going to have a fascist martial law imposed on people here. So that's what they're saying. And I take that seriously. In fact, even the Democrats are saying you got to abide by the Constitution to the troops. Why would they be saying that? Because Trump is saying we are going to use these troops against not only the Venezuelans, we're going to use them against people in this country to take away your democratic rights. In fact, MSNBC is kind of interesting because the corporate media, for the most part, confuses people and ideologically. But MSNBC, or MS now, they changed, NBC is gone, but MS has been having people on saying that there's fascism. We face fascism. And most of the left don't even believe that. Most of the left still believe that we can, it's like Trump 2 is going to be like Trump 1. No. And that's a danger. If you can't confront the reality that you're facing, you're in danger. You have to confront what you're facing. And the left is unable or unwilling to confront the reality. We need a united front. We need to work together. Working people have to unite together around issues like AI, a united front to defend ourselves. We have no choice. Or against fascism, against this militarization of the cities. We need a united front to stop that with general strikes. Now, Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, has called for a general strike. Sarah Nelson, who's head of the airline flight attendants, CWA, has called for a general strike. But it's interesting, no other union leaders have said, yes, we agree with that. We need a general strike. We have to get ready. We have to prepare for what's coming, because they are going to try to institute martial law. And what's happening to immigrants is going to happen to unionists. It's going to happen to all working people. It's not just immigrants. There's so many immigrants, and that's the whole thing about fascism and the ideology. This country is a country of immigrants and alongside Native Americans. But large number of immigrants. This is our country. I mean, when I heard that they were using National Guard helicopters, Trump, to chase farm workers off the fields in California, imagine that. The farm workers, they produce our food. They make California a rich state because of agriculture. And you're going to use helicopters to chase them off the field? This is madness. True madness. You know, the workers that do the work, to produce the food for us, we're chasing them off the fields and driving them out of the country. It's crazy.
On that note, I have a question. In our previous conversations, you mentioned that particularly like in the transportation and warehouse sectors, AI has had a very direct impact on working conditions. So I guess I'd like you to talk about some of those horror stories about the way that AI has not just been replacing labor, but essentially is being used to strengthen capital's ability to exploit labor.
Well, Amazon, and we're going to be having a presentation of a worker who has worked at Amazon and then got into studying AI, studies workers at the Amazon factory. They track them. They have cameras. They look, cover your emotions, facial expressions, how you feel. I mean, this is being tracked all the time, this data. And these Amazon factories were destroying workers. Workers were injured. Workers went to OSHA. They could not get any place in OSHA because OSHA has been captured by Amazon, by these capitalists. And then AI has been used to automate the factories. In fact, at UPS and Amazon, they want to use AI robotics to get rid of large numbers of workers, millions of workers. And the unions, the president of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, I was at a rally in Sacramento for the UPS workers, and he said, in our contract, we stopped AI and robotics. And I videotaped. I said, what are you talking about? How can you stop AI and robotics? I mean, like, how do you stop technology? Can you get a contract to stop technology? You know, this idea that the union bureaucracy gives you, that they're going to stop this, and saying that publicly. But that's, I think, the character of the union bureaucracy. They're incapable of really stopping it. And therefore, they lied to the members. They lied to the Teamsters. But as far as the effect in logistics, the drive to get rid of workers in logistics, to control them, they're training robotic trucks. There are robotic trucks now in Texas. They're using infrared cameras in cabs, which is harming workers. Teamsters, UPS, and the O'Brien Teamster leadership allowed them to introduce these AI cameras, and it affects their eyes, their health in cabs of UPS trucks.
Will you explain a little more about that?
Well, what they want to do is they want to train the trucks, the AI, on how to drive trucks. So they've installed infrared cameras inside the cab of trucks that are on 16 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 60 hours a week in somebody's face and eyes. And if you take medication or others, it affects you. You get sores, you have health problems. And workers, Teamster rank and filers, this guy, Eric Johnson, he was affected by this. He began to investigate and found out that it was harmful to him. And he tried to get a study from the NIOSH and to get the union to do something. Union wouldn't do anything. And the union could have stopped it because the company would not make a statement that this technology is safe. That's all the union had to do. All they had to do is ask, we want a statement before you install this, we want a statement that this equipment is safe. They wouldn't do it because they don't want to fight management. It's a company union. This is a problem. When you have a union that goes along with the company with the introduction of technology, you have a union in which you're not going to be defended. So he began a struggle with other truck drivers. They're doing surveys, and it's not just UPS, it's Amazon. The purpose of the infrared cameras, train vehicles how to drive without drivers. So they're helping the company train AI to get rid of these workers. The same in education, the same in all these other fields. So that's an example. And the idea of logistics and what's happening in logistics is in trucking, it's in auto, warehouses without workers. They want to get rid of massive numbers of workers and automate and use AI to do that. And as I said before, in China, the docks are automated, a large number of docks, and they want to do the same here in the West Coast and the East Coast. And in the East Coast, they just had a conference that the ILA was involved in Portugal, in Lisbon, on AI. Said we're going to stop this, but they don't talk about capitalism. They don't talk about war, because this is part of what's going on with AI and technology. As we all know, AI is being used to help in wars and targeting Palestinians and driving wars and targeting immigrants. And it was used the fascists used it, and they used IBM to target people in concentration camps. I mean, that was a profitable business, which IBM was involved in with the Nazis. So, in any event, I mean, as far as logistics, right now there's a struggle. There's a planned merger of Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern was the train company that had that derailment in East Palestine, where they blew up vinyl chloride tankers. They poisoned the community. Thousands of people were poisoned. And they were told by the owner of the vinyl chloride, don't blow it up. They did it anyway. Nothing happened to them. And the workers there and residents were contaminated. They couldn't work because of their contamination, their sickness. And then they lost their health care. And now they're without health care, and they can't get money to move out of their homes. There's a bill called the Stafford Act, which was passed after Love Canal, to provide compensation for residents in a mass incident, a mass site of casualties, and to provide money to move out of your homes, and also health care. They can't even get that. Biden would do it. Trump wouldn't do it. Vance wouldn't do it. Both parties refused to declare the act, Stafford Act, so they could get taken care of. So again, it's an example of the complete corporate capture of the state by both the Democrats and Republicans and the billionaires who control them. So that, and what they want to do with the railroads is get rid of railway workers. They fought to get rid of two railroad workers. One, excuse me, they want to go to one engineer, and they want to get rid of them. They would like to fly planes without pilots. They want to have ships without sailors. That's the aim, and that's what they're doing now in their work with AI and using that technology to get rid of workers.
My follow-up question to that, if this is is just what are the bright spots in terms of international connections actually growing using, email and Zoom, and what is the development within the working class that gives you the most hope, or examples of people building international solidarity?
Well, it's tremendous. I mean, we have meetings with workers in South Africa and Namibia. You can have global meetings with workers all over the world, and even although it's a threat to workers, there is simultaneous translation on Zoom now, so you can get translation of people with different languages. That's tremendous. But I believe that actually, as workers are faced with the same attacks on a global level, and have social media, or communication technology that allows them to communicate, they can link up internationally and organize. Teachers can link up internationally. Education workers can link up internationally. The education unions are not doing that. They're not linking up this fight against AI in the classrooms internationally. They're not having panels of teachers all over the world because it's a political struggle globally, and they don't want to unite workers, the rank and file, with each other on a global level, which is what we have to do.
But do you see that happening elsewhere, anywhere?
Yes, it is. It is happening. Workers are linking up. I mean, workers are communicating. And I think that it is developing, and we're trying to make it happen. In fact, the conference that we're having on December, we want to follow it up with an international conference in July with workers around the world on the issue of AI. It's not an American issue. It's an international issue. These issues are not American issues. And this is the rise of internationalism. I remember when I was going to school, if you said internationalism, when I was going to school, you were a communist. That was a communist ideology to say we need internationalism. Well, global capitalism is international. And the American working class understands that we're in a global economy. We're connected globally. I mean, and Trump discovered that to his chagrin, that you can't shut down products from China, for example. What is it? Because we're dependent on China. We're dependent on the trade with China. The export of capital by the United States forced American people, American workers, to say we're linked up, and fighting each other is not the solution. Fighting the workers in China, fighting the workers in Russia, fighting the workers in other countries is not going to solve our problem. It's a system problem. It's a problem of capitalism, how capitalism is organized. So this global problem of capitalism that the working class face can only be solved by workers globally coming together. And I think that's a conception that more and more workers see. We need to link up globally. Workers in the rest of the world want to link up with American workers, but our trade unions here are pro-capitalist, pro-imperialist. It's amazing how education unions in this country are silent about the trillions of dollars going to war. How could that be? Think about this. Education workers in this country and their unions are silent about trillions of dollars going to war. It's coming out of education. It's coming out of healthcare. The money that's going to war is taken away from schools, from healthcare. And yet there's silence by this trade union bureaucracy. That's criminal. That's absolutely criminal that they're not opposing the war budget. Did any national union, education union, or healthcare union oppose the war spending in the last budget? It's not even an issue.
I so agree with you. I think that the specific thing I'm digging for now, Steve, is I agree that an international movement of the working class is what we need. But I'm not so hopeful these days that it's actually emerging, even with the technology. So I'm wondering, what are some of the things you see actually happening that make it look like this might develop?
Well,
you know what I mean? Because I agree with you that also, almost like in terms of discourse, like in terms of the way people talk now, it's almost like we're closer to international solidarity rhetorically. But in fact, I don't see or know that it's actually happening. You know what I'm saying?
I'll give you an example. The struggle around Palestine actually has brought workers together around the world. And on the 28th of this month, the Italian workers are having a general strike against militarization because, of course, the capitalists are saying we have to spend more on the military, not on social services, not on healthcare. So they're organizing a general strike, shut it all down on the 28th, and the USB union has made an appeal to American workers to take similar action here on the 28th. So there's going to be a rally at the ILW International headquarters and the ILA in the East Coast on the 28th, supporting the call for a blockade of all military cargo to Israel. So they made an appeal in English to American workers, and we're joining with them on the 28th on this International Day. I think that's a start. But the workers in Europe and Greece are mobilizing around Palestine, around stopping the genocide in Gaza. And they're reaching workers in the United States. We have to develop that. This tool of communication technology is the vehicle to do that. I mean, this is an appeal that we are helping to publicize of this Italian union to American workers, to our brothers and sisters in Italy and the rest of the world who are taking action. Our union bureaucracy, they don't even want to say the word genocide. Think about that. The AFL-CIO and the unions cannot say the word genocide, and we, the American people, are paying for this genocide with our tax dollars, And this union bureaucracy can't say the word? Why? Why can't they say the word genocide? What's the problem? It is a genocide. The reason is it raised the question, what the hell are we doing? What is our country doing? What are our unions doing? What is our government doing? But I think they're not going to be able to contain this because the nature of capitalism and imperialism now is out of control. And the attack on Venezuela, as an example, is going to lead major explosions. Even in the capitalist class, the military, they don't want it. They're getting rid of military officers who are against this, know it's insane to attack Venezuela. That could lead to a major explosion in Latin America. They could throw Americans out, close all the embassies. You want to play with us? We're closing all the U.S. embassies in Latin America and Central America. Get out. The rise, we haven't seen a massive rise of nationalism, self-determination around the world, but the United States is agitating. One thing about Trump and the fascists is they're agitators, provocateurs. Musk and Trump with the chainsaw, or they are agitating people. They're putting in people's faces. We are going to destroy you unless you fight back. And people are not radical. People want to take care of themselves, pay their rent, take care of their bills and take care of their families. But they're confronted now with a radical attack, and not just here, but globally. Milei, what he's doing in Argentina. And he was helped by Trump, who they don't have money for healthcare, for housing here, but they $40 billion to keep Milei in power. And people see that in this country. Even people who supported Trump, the MAGA people. Why are we giving $40 billion to this fascist Milei when we can't even take care of our healthcare here? People are making those connections, and that's why politically we need a Labor Party. We need a political alternative that could provide a programmatic alternative to what we have with the Democrats and Republicans. We don't have one. There's a political vacuum, and fascism used that. That's one of the reasons Trump got elected. There is no choice. Not that elections can solve problems, but even from the point of electoral parties, there's no choice.
Yeah. So the part I agree with, first off, is the capitalism is the problem, and it's a global problem. That the working class is the solution, and that the working class is an international class ultimately. And I agree that, like, even I think that imperialism and global war. I think on this show we've talked. We already believe we're in World War III. That we're at the early stages of that. And regardless of whether the U.S. goes into Venezuela or not, there's going to be more aggressive wars that look like the destructive nature of capitalism on the march that we see in Palestine and in the war in Ukraine, where you're just gutted cities, and gutted cities led by an AI process, not just in terms of surveillance, but drones and autonomous vehicles to fight these wars, and AI to decide when the trigger is launched for missile systems and things like that. The part that I see in this country, because we had Fabio Vigi here, who's from Italy, and he did mention that there had been massive waves of strikes in Italy in the first run up to the destruction of Gaza that was taking place. But also noted that he really does believe that the Italian working class is actually in a much weaker situation now than they were even 10 years ago, in terms of the American model being pushed on them. So I took no hope really from the European working class in talking with him. He was saying, no, we're as fucked in the heads as Americans are about the possibility of social democracy bringing us some sort of salvation and things like that. What I see here is no question that authoritarianism has been on the march, not just with National Guard being mobilized to go after people in Portland or San Francisco or Chicago, but we saw it during COVID with basically the lockdowns and people accepting those lockdowns and basically being told, you better take this product or you're losing a job. We saw that that really strict, rigid authoritarianism that people associate with fascism not just under Trump, but we just saw it under the Democrats only 4 or 5 years ago. And what I see in the people who are talking about the concerns of today, already you're seeing them say Mamdani might be candidates like Mamdani might be an option. So you already see the rebuilding of the Democratic Party in the face of whatever what Trump is doing, and you even see it with Marjorie Taylor Greene basically trying to organize the populist right to bring it back into the electoral system. So I don't see anything on the ground fighting things, and in many ways, I don't see technology. Maybe it had this possibility. No, I see technology on a local level very much alienating workers, making it so that our union meetings are taking place on Zoom rather than in person, and having the effect of connecting workers, like you noted, individually to the capitalist, actually, because this infrastructure in no way is free infrastructure. It's not. We might think we're speaking freely, but every one of these lines lead to a center point of Google or Palantir or the U.S. government, and they are controlled by them. Like these electronic highways are literally our master's tools, into which we are being allowed to speak, invited to speak, mostly for data collection and then ultimately for control. And like you said, to build their AI so they can replace us with workers. I mean, that is the reason for this infrastructure. And as you noted, it is not a workers created infrastructure. Yeah, workers created it, but it wasn't out of the spirit of workers. It was out of the spirit of the U.S. empire and the U.S. military. So I feel much more pessimistic about the state of the local working class, because and the reason that's meaningful is I feel like if workers can't defend themselves locally, we have nothing to provide each other in terms of solidarity internationally. It is our ability to stop our capitalists right at the point, like at my job, is if we can't stop them at my job, then I have no solidarity to offer workers. And so my sense is technology and the internet has been a factor in keeping us more isolated and in deepening our alienation in relationship to one another, as opposed to doing that thing that I think we were sold it would connect us and things like that. So I'm wondering what you say about that, because those are some maybe pushbacks I would have to the notion that we are being united more, the possibility of this being united more internationally, because I don't think we can offer international solidarity internationally unless we can actually stop not just our capitalists nationally, but even just the attacks we're taking right at the place of work, whether it be at my job in teaching, or a person working at Kaiser, or what have you. And like Kenny said, the union apparatus seems to be it's actually another one of our enemies in that project. So I'm really wondering how, but I do agree with you that because capitalism is going to get into deeper and deeper crisis, and the war is an expression of that crisis, that we are going to be forced out of survival. And it's not just the fact that we won't have money to pay for things. The actual growth of technology and the growth of the organic composition of capital and under the labor theory of value basically means that profits are going to get smaller and smaller, because you can only take profits from living labor. And so their solution to get out of their problems are going to create a deeper crisis. It's just, I don't know where this break is going to happen, where we will not be so. I feel like over the 20 or 30 years, we've become more alienated, more separated. The working class has become less combative, and as a collective class. And I wonder what you say about that, because the prospects don't look good. We need a revolution, but my sense of the possibility of revolution is lower now, even as it becomes clear that we need one.
Well, a major obstacle to mobilization of the working class and a mass working class movement in the United States is the trade union bureaucracy. They don't want it. When the Kaiser CNA nurses had a strike around AI at Kaiser and San Rafael, replacement of 42 nurses in AI, they didn't rally the working class. They didn't bring the patients there and say, you're being affected. when healthcare workers at Kaiser go on strike, at Sutter, they are at UC, they don't have flyers to the patients. You would think, if you're going on strike, you're a healthcare worker, appeal to the patients. Mm-hmm. Let them know how you're being affected. Nothing. They don't want this connection. We need to build a movement, a connection. Many of these workers are union members at Kaiser, at UC. We've got to connect with the people who get the services to build a movement. They don't want that because that politicizes the struggle. In other words, the trade union bureaucracy does not want a politically conscious working class in this country because that's hard to control. As you say, union bureaucrats don't want membership meetings. In fact, a lot of unions will not even have not have elections unless they were required under law to have elections. They don't want elections. They don't want debate and discussion. I would say, though, that this militarization of the city has led to a fight back in Chicago, in Charlotte, in Los Angeles. And as a matter of fact, in the Bay Area, there were billionaires, Wang, NVIDIA, and Salesforce, who told Trump, don't send in troops here. Why would they say that? There's a reason. They're afraid things will get out of hand here. The center of AI is in San Francisco. You bring in troops and you start terrorizing people, it can get to be a major confrontation. When we are going to have these confrontations, there's no avoiding it. And we in the United States, us, have not experienced a working class movement in the United States in our lifetime. Since the 30s and 40s. There have been no general strikes. The last general strike was in 46 in Oakland. The union bureaucracy is terrified of general strikes because what happens in a general strike? You have the collective power of the entire working class, all workers coming together. That power could mean the organization at Amazon. That power could mean the organization of millions of workers who want unions but are afraid they'll be fired if they join a union. Even mention the word union and you can get fired. So general strikes create a movement of the working class that the capitalists are not able to contain. The danger that Trump is doing is that he's agitating the working class in this country. As I said earlier, they're agitators, they're provocateurs, and they're poking the working class in the face. They're telling them this is the way it's going to be, take it. And when you do that over and over again, you poke somebody in the face, pretty soon they say enough. And that is what's happening in this country. People are saying more and more enough. Working class have the power, and they have the power to shut down this country. They have the power to shut down this world. And I think that's where we're going. And actually, the unions in Italy, they were surprised because they had to stop it all. That was their slogan. Stop it all. And they shut down the whole country. Even Meloni, fascist head of Italy, was shocked by that because this had such mass power of workers, union workers, and students, the mass of people who went out in the streets. So it wasn't just a union thing. It was a people's movement. It was a workers' movement in Italy. And that's going to grow. That is going to grow globally. There have been, rebellions around the world. What the world is waiting for, and I agree, the people of the world are waiting for people in the United States to wake up, to stop this madness, to stop this terrorism, to stop this military armada destroying the world and climate and everything else. People are waiting, and it is going to happen in this country. It has happened. I mean, the history of the American working class, there have been rebellions. I mean, in 1886, in 1877, with the National Railway strike, there was a commune in St. Louis for 5 days of workers, German internationalists, French communards, blacks, Native Americans, and railroad workers coming together, taking over the city. And in this period when we face a crash of the financial system, and that's what we face, a financial crash greater than 2008, they're in a less of a position to handle it than the previous government. These people are completely unhinged. I mean, they're crazy and they're unhinged. Their ability to hire, to to deal with a meltdown, a financial meltdown of the world capitalist economy, what are they going to do? When the panic comes in AI in this bubble, I mean, you're going to have a massive financial collapse. There's so much speculation. I mean, I remember the .com speculative binge, like the 20s, when people were buying stocks, AB stock, CBS stock. They didn't know what the stocks meant. Total financial speculation. On my job, people were running around, got to put my pension money in this, put my pension money in that. It was a mania, a capitalist stock mania. That's what we're in today with AI. We're in a capitalist stock mania that is going to lead to a crash. This is what happens in capitalism. And it's going to confront working people, the majority. But how are we going to survive? But actually, California, we have great wealth here. We have agriculture, we have resources, fourth largest economy in the world. We have tremendous resources, but it's not going to be survivable with capitalism. And the capitalists know that. They're worried about it. They're worried about Mondani. I mean, what happened was Trump was afraid of Mondani, because if he brings in the National Guard in a military confrontation in New York, the New York working class can shut the city down. And actually, the capitalists are very vulnerable because the working class, black, brown working class in the cities in this country have the power.
I'm not sure if they're afraid of Mamdani, Steve. I mean, I saw
I don't think
Mamdani taking a picture with George
They're not
Soros's
afraid
son.
of the person Mondani. I'm not talking about the person Mondani. I'm talking about the social conditions that led to Mondani. I mean, the social conditions that led to people saying, we have enough, we're going to vote for this quote unquote communist. I mean, here's Trump meeting with the communist mayor of New York. It's all bogus. I mean, Mondani is not a communist. He's a social democrat.
Right.
He wants to reform capitalism. But I mean, this is what fascists do. Everybody who opposes them are communists. I mean, they accused Obama of being a communist. I remember seeing a sticker on a car with hammer and sickle over Obama's name, a communist. But the fact of the matter is, the social conditions that led to him becoming mayor, beating these other politicians, is because of this social economic crisis. And that's going to grow. That's going to grow. And as I said, you'd think in Chicago, this teachers union, Chicago teachers union, and others would be saying, let's shut it down. Let's have a general strike. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do that. The unions are not saying, let's close it all down. Why? Because a general strike would transform the social conditions in this country. When you have a general strike in San Francisco, as they did in 1934, it changed everything. When the working class came together in San Francisco, boom, that was it. They brought in the National Guard. They didn't stop it. You can't stop it. When millions of workers, and we haven't seen it again in our lifetime, when millions of workers start moving, think about AI communication, internet. How are they going to control the internet when millions of people start moving in this country? And they are going to move. How do you control that? You can't just shut down the internet, because if they shut down the internet, everything closes. The airlines, everything is shut down. The banks, we are so tied up in the internet that when it's shut down, everything closes. That's a radical thing. This technology, the closure of this technology would mean the closure of our system. I mean, it would have to be resuscitated. Think about what that means. So the capitalists are caught between a rock and a hard place.
I share your sense of the working class energy, as a factor of fundamental change. And you mentioned, that strike, the general strike in 1930. What was it?
34.
34. And again, this is just to share my lack of optimism, and yet we are here in this moment, right? Like that happened, and the score is still piled against us, right? Like the working class. And so my question is, right? Like, I agree with you. There is sentiment, right? Like, and they use the right and left divide to make us fight each other, right? And not against the people above. And people like Mandani, right? Like they represent that universal basic income type of stuff, which doesn't doesn't address the issue, right? It's actually another type of jail, another type of fence, right? Where they will control people, right? With that dream, or tax the rich, right? The system is fundamentally in crisis, and something where I do believe we're coming into a massive change, a massive crisis. I actually don't see us coming out with more power workers, because I've seen, again, the effectiveness of capitalism to reinvent itself, to convince people to still play by the rules of capitalism. And so my question is, right, that energy has to go somewhere, right? The social energy, the working class energy, and we have to build independent institutions or organization, basically, to be able to compete and win against the capitalist system. So what is your sense of how do we sustain that energy to go beyond just asking for better working conditions, and to actually have political power to be able to impose the will of the people, democracy? So how do we sustain that energy?
Well, there is no working class party in the United States. We don't have a working class party, and that's a political problem. It's a political vacuum. And the major reason we don't have a working class party or even a social democracy, quote unquote social democracy, is because of the witch hunts in the 50s and 60s. They kicked communists and militants out of the union. They cut off the head of the unions. The people that built the CIO, the workers and militants that built the mass unions in this country, were kicked out of the unions. They were purged. So you have over decades, you have a union bureaucracy which are business unionists. Ideologically, they support capitalism. So, we're in these unions if we're lucky enough to be a union member, because most workers are not even in unions. Most young people have never been in a union, would like to be, but they can't. They're working gig jobs, or they're trying to survive, or they're unemployed. So, but these unions have power, and they are a vehicle to organize in and to raise these issues of a general strike, to raise the issue of single payer, national control of healthcare. I mean, I just had a rally yesterday at the Port of Oakland against trade war, against tariffs, and also against sanctions on Cuba, on Venezuela, on Iran. There was the first rally in the United States, think about this, first rally in the United States by labor and community people against a trade war. Now, what is a trade war? A trade war is capitalists fighting each other over markets. Who does it benefit? It doesn't benefit the working, it hurts workers. So we had a rally, and it was actually covered on ABC. But, the union bureaucracy do not want to politically educate workers. We have to fight this trade war. It's an attack on the working class. It's hurting workers. Central Valley, they're laying off workers in food processing. They can't compete with the rest of the world. These are concrete issues facing working people. We have to organize around them politically so people begin to make these connections, connect the dots. We have to connect the dots. If you can't connect the dots, but because we have a pro-capitalist, pro-imperialist trade union bureaucracy, they don't want to connect the dots. They don't want to talk about a workers' party against the Democrats and Republicans, even though the Democrats have been screwing them and us for decades. So there has to be a political debate and discussion. Again, social media actually can help that. I mean, that's why they want to shut it down or control it, like TikTok, because the danger for the capitalists is workers. I mean, start getting together and start discussing. Occupy was a threat to the capitalists. It was a threat. I mean, why would Eric Holder and Obama use the police nationally to shut down Occupy? What is Occupy? People coming together to talk about things? I mean, think about that. Occupy is a big threat to the United States, to the government, that the Democrats organized to shut it down with the police. They're afraid of people coming together, connecting, debating, discussion. That's a threat. For all the teachers to get together and start debating and discussing, that's a great threat. To talk about technology, AI, how they're being exploited, how the students are being exploited, where the money is going, why the money is going to war and not to education. Those are political questions that the union bureaucracy doesn't want to discuss regularly. They don't want to debate those. They don't want to have a discussion. We don't have a workers' movement in this country. One of the reasons in Italy that they have this is they have more of a workers' movement. They have a tradition of workers' militancy, workers' movements. And even in France, where the level of unionization, 12%, they still have general strikes. And in the general strike that they had against the attack on their social security system, I was amazed because I was looking at Channel 3, I think, French TV, and they were showing the general strike, and we did a video on. They, at each work location, they would have a vote every day about whether to continue the strike. Can you imagine? I mean, workers at their location having a vote, a discussion about whether to continue the strike. I mean, the idea of democracy. How about democracy? I mean, that radical. Here, it's all top down. We'll tell you. You don't even know what the agreement is. We'll let you know after the fact. Mm-hmm. The UPS secret contract. They have a memorandum of understanding. They'll keep quiet. You can't talk about it. We sign an agreement. Non-disclosure, NDAs. I mean, imagine that. The union bureaucracy are signing NDAs with the bosses to keep quiet about what they're negotiating. Think about that. A corporate capitalist NDA signed by the union bureaucrats, Sean O'Brien, to not tell the workers what's in their contract. What kind of crap is that? Think about the mentality, the pro-boss capitalist mentality that you would tell your members, oh, we signed a boss, we can't tell you about what's in the contract. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. So we have to break that ideological control that the capitalists have on the working class, and we have to expose it. And workers are fed up and angry because their conditions, their benefits are going down. They can't survive. I mean, young people make revolutions. Young people make revolutions because they have no future. That's why young people hate this system. What is the future for young people in this country and this world? We have to ask, what is the future of young people? If I was a young person, I would be terrified. What's my future? Am I going to get a job? Can I get a house? Can I have a family? No, they're complaining about the birth rate. It's going down in the United States. It's going down in Japan. It's going down in Korea because people can't afford families. You can't afford a family, so you can't have families. And they complain about it, but it's a system that prevents us from having families. It's a system that prevents us from having homes. It's a system that prevents us from living as human beings.
Steve Zeltzer.
I'm so glad to talk to you, Steve. I just want to say that I think you're a treasure. you're a real fighter, and I'm glad that you are still around fighting.
I'm excited. We have so much potential. Creativity of people in this world is tremendous. The internet, when I saw that, to have where humanity can come together, workers can come together globally and debate and discuss things, that's fantastic. That is a tremendous asset. And if we have a world, and when we have a world, when we need to have that world where people can communicate and develop and use their ideas, their theory, their creativity to build a new world, that's what we have to have. That is what we have to have. And, one of the things about the attack on the actors and actresses, writers, very dangerous. Kimmel, the way they went after Kimmel. When the fascists attack the artists, as they are doing, great danger. Great danger. Because these artists and writers can produce and challenge in social media and in the capitalist ideology. In movies and art, tremendous power. And during the 60s, which I was active in, there was a mass movement that frightened the capitalist class. I mean, Nixon thought there was going to be a revolution when people were surrounding the White House. It was far from a revolution, actually, because the working class at that time could get homes, could get jobs, their kids could get jobs. Today, very different situation. The working class itself is under attack. The working class itself can't survive. So the ability to buy off people does not exist. The witch hunt in this country was successful in part because they offered auto workers at General Motors and Ford, Chrysler, they could buy cars, they could buy homes. And they said to workers, you don't need politics. You don't need politics. You have a family, you can have a car, you can get a job. Why do you need politics? That's exactly what they did as a way of carrying out that witch hunt. That is no longer the case today. There is no future for workers. And that combined with young people, with black and brown people, Asian people coming together, one of the great things about Musk and Trump again is they're attacking everybody at the same time. Veterans. They're attacking women, veterans, teachers, scientists. I mean, they're attacking the country. And I would have to say, they're disassembling the United States. They're disassembling this country. Everything that we built up in this country, University of California, great institutions, great science, great hospitals, they're destroying it. They are literally destroying the country. And when people wake up to that fact, then they're going to get radical. Because that is what's going on. California is a great state, a great history, a great institutions, and it's all being destroyed. And the Democrats are not going to save it.
Yeah, well, they did the first round of that breakup in 2020 and 2021. I mean, not the first round, but just their round of disassembling institutions and throwing teachers and healthcare workers and military people out of work because they wouldn't take a forced medical procedure. So this is not something, in my opinion, we have digested several rounds of this, and unfortunately, it keeps finding newfound electoral expression as one wing of the Democratic or Republican Party. And I feel like unless we get out of that cycle, I'm not particularly optimistic. But I do think for people who've heard mostly a lot of pessimism from us, those of us on What's Left, I think it is important for people to hear like what is possible. And I do think you have spoken about a history where those things have happened and created possibilities, even if they weren't fully realized. And that has to be why people we're going to have to do this again. I think the fact that you're willing to have a conference and they're taking the lead in trying to get something started around challenging AI, because I don't think we are going to be able to deal with the challenge of capitalism and AI unless there is a revolution ultimately. And I do think that's the kind of message. No, that's just not the message you'll hear at that conference. I think the conference is trying to get people together to start that process.
We got to have a discussion. People have to start talking and discussing what is this technology? What does it mean for working people? And the purpose of the conference is not just to talk about it, but to form working groups, teachers, working groups, healthcare workers in these different areas to start to work together. I mean, one of the things about the trade union bureaucracy and AI, they don't want to bring all workers together. They want to do it in a business unionist perspective. It's not a social issue. It's not a class issue. It's not for all workers. It's just, how are we going to protect our little fiefdom? No way. You cannot protect your little, little place. You have to unite with the entire working class. In other words, the fight against AI, the way it's being used, the introduction of it, can only be solved by all workers coming together. One group of workers cannot stop it. Nurses alone cannot stop it. These unions are so idiotic to think that nurses can stop AI without linking up with all the other workers in healthcare. Crazy. How does one group of workers think they could stop this technology without uniting with the other workers? But business union, we don't want to get all the workers in healthcare together. Think about that. Why hasn't there been a healthcare workers conference of all healthcare workers from all unions discussing AI? Oh, that's dangerous. all these workers from different unions getting together, all kinds of problems. Start connecting the dots. People start working together, cross union lines. This is what we have to do. We have to break down business unionism. Same with education. Why aren't all education workers getting together? SEIU, AFT, NEA, all the unions getting together and having meetings. That's very dangerous for the union bureaucracy.
Yeah, and the issue of immigration has been being used again to divide workers across borders.
Absolutely. I mean, they want us to fight immigrants. The idea that they want us to fight immigrants, our brothers and sisters, these billionaires, these fascists want us to fight each other. Are you mad? Are you mad?
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have us fight each other and they profit off that? It's madness. You can't make it up, but it's here.
Yep.
We've had a lot to we've unpacked a lot with you, Steve Zeltzer.
It's fun.
No, Steve, thank you very much for doing this. I'm excited to get this conference information about the conference out. But honestly, I didn't know about your background, and I knew you were going to be passionate, so that wasn't surprising to me. But it's just good to have you speak about these things here, and I appreciate your optimism because I'm not but it's helpful for us to work with each other and share those perspectives because we are in the fight. It's just, man, I don't know how we're gonna get to that revolution, and yet I don't think there's any alternative but revolution. So I appreciate you speaking so both passionately but also optimistically about it. I hope you're fucking right about some of that stuff.
Me too.
We'll see. I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
Will you tell us how can we follow your work? What's the name of your do you have a YouTube?
I have a YouTube
channel?
labor video on YouTube, and I have programs and interviews and history. And
you're part of the Pacific Media Workers Guild, right?
Yes, Pacific Media Workers.
Yeah, that's a part of you've been as part of the Pacifica Network, right?
Well, Pacific Media Workers Guild is the union of newspaper journalists and some interpreters and staff. I'll produce a program called Capitalism, Race, and Democracy. And that's on Pacifica, not on KPFA. They kicked me off of KPFA, actually.
Why did they kick you off?
I did a program on Palestine.
Oh, my God.
On Zionism and the labor movement. And, they kicked me off. The manager said, we're going to go in another direction. So that was that. But that's okay, because I produce Work Week on KPOO. It's a Black community radio station in San Francisco. And Pacifica's Capitalism, Race, and Democracy. You can go there and get the show. It's a weekly show. And we need a labor channel. We need a working class channel, where all workers can get information on their unions, on their workers, on struggles globally. And that's possible, more possible today than ever, actually. So it's a great opportunities.
Kenny?
I don't want to prolong the show, but I am curious as to your take as to why they're censoring the Palestinian issue. Like what is your take on that?
Zionism is a ideology. It's an imperialist ideology. I mean, in fact, the Zionists work with the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually collaborated with the Nazis. The Nazis gave them an award for their collaboration. In a book, Lenny Brenner has written a book called 51 Documents about the relationship of the Nazis and the Zionists. So, and Israel is a project of imperialism, a project of the United States. Democrats and Republicans support it. And to attack Zionism is to attack imperialism. And actually, the politicalization of many workers, activists in the United States about Zionism is very dangerous for the capitalists, because this education and understanding about Zionism is also an education about imperialism. It's not just over there, Zionism. The genocide against the Palestinians is also, there's genocide going on all over, many places. And people learn about that. People are being radicalized in this country. And this radicalization is a real threat. I mean, you have Wiener, Zionist, who says he's for the immigrants, but then he wants to kick Palestinian teachers or people who are pro-Palestinian out of schools. This Prop 715, which they passed, is going to censor education so that if you are critical of Israel, you're an anti-Semite. This is the ideology of fascists who don't want a debate and discussion. The attack on education, the attack on ethnic studies in this country, what they call wokeism. They don't want people to wake up. They don't want people to wake up to their history. What we did in the 60s in the fight for ethnic studies and open admissions at San Francisco State, where it started, the first fight, is this history is critical to our knowledge. They're critical of Philippines, they're critical of imperialist wars, they're critical of how people were forced here from around the world because of imperialism. This is part of the history of the United States, part of the history of the world. So they're afraid of history. And that's what fascists do. They want to sanitize history. They want to create their own history. That's what they're trying to do. But I don't think they're going to be successful. How do you tell the black working class in this country, forget about the Civil War? Don't talk about our history, the rebellion against against slavery? That was what was very good about Brandon Johnson's framing the general strike in the context of the rebellion, the strike of black slaves in the Civil War. What a fantastic expression of a fight against slavery. We're going to withhold our labor. You're not going to be using our labor to keep us as slaves. That's a radical thing. And they don't want people to know in this country the role of blacks in rebelling against slavery. That's dangerous. When people wake up, and they are waking up, that is a threat to capitalism. It's a threat to the system.
Steve Zeltzer.
Okay.
You have brought some light to this dark, gloomy, pessimistic group.
Action. We got to get in action. That's the only solution. I mean, the great thing about a mass movement in the 60s, action, mass movement, people mobilizing. And the exciting thing about the coming period in the working class, they're going to blow their minds because the capitalists in this country have never experienced a mass working class movement in this country. You and I have not experienced it. I've got gray hair, but the capitalists have not experienced it. And when they do, they think they got problems now. They haven't seen any problems.
It's true.
Okay.
I hope you're right. The AI is, we've just, I've heard news of just a 30-year-old something woman that married a robotic AI. So I hope one day we'll not have those things. We'll fight, actually not marry them.
I agree. People are beautiful.
All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode. Steve Zeltzer, founder of LaborFest.net and producer of Work Week and Capitalism, Race and Democracy on Pacifica and Labor Video Project, a member of the Pacifica Media Workers Guild and also a supporter of the United Front Committee for a Labor Party. Also helped build Labor Tech, which focuses on the role of AI, robotics, and tech in the workplace, and is organizing a conference on AI and future labor, the future of labor, on the 13th of December. And we have those links in the episode notes, and we'll have any of that. You can contact us. All right. So What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests in the episode notes where you found this episode, or on our blog at what'sthepodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you have liked anything you have heard here, please subscribe, rate the video, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on the Spotify, iTunes, Podcast, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. And again, you can find any of that in the episode notes or wherever you found this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us at our contact us through our blog. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-host Kenny Cepeda and Michael Hoffman and Andy Lipson. Check us out next time. Thank you all for listening. Ciao.